I was such a militant atheist. I had these long philosophical rants about how there was nothing more. And, basically, I had developed that thought system because of how chaotic my upbringing was. Trigger warning, it's a little traumatizing. I grew up really impoverished in a family full of addiction and sexual trauma and physical trauma, emotional trauma. And so for me, it was much easier to just hide from any thought of something bigger, because if I believed in something greater than myself, if I believed in God or the divine or the creator, then I would have to also believe that that was the force that was making my life so challenging. And so for me, it just seemed easier just to hide from God. And so I developed this whole identity of non-belief. And my parents, they never taught me about religion or God or anything like that. They were both active addicts. In 2007, my parents committed suicide with one another due to their addiction and all of the mental stuff that goes along with that, the poverty that goes along with it. They were, at a new end, another end, like about to be evicted again, no lights, no gas, no phone. And this was like a very common pattern. And they had just gotten to the point where I was 23, my sister was 18. I had just gotten married 3 weeks before they died. And so I think in their minds, they thought, well, the big one has a husband now, and the big one will take care of the little one, and the little one's technically an adult, so we can leave now. And, it was a really traumatizing loss. My sister and I found them. And this really rooted me into atheism even deeper, because I thought, okay, there's definitely no way that there's something bigger, because this is just way too much. So I was already dealing with my own addiction. And in that moment of my parents' suicide, my addiction became my parent, and it also became my higher power. So I didn't have room to believe in God because drugs were my God. And I was very content with that being my life. And until I had my spiritual experience and everything really, really transformed 180 degrees. So I ended up overdosing in March of 2019. And this is after being on drugs for 20 years. And I had this very transformative spiritual experience where I went to heaven. And God was like, girl, you got to stop using drugs. And I was like, what? It's crazy. But a lot went into my spiritual experience. And at first, it kind of felt like I was experiencing what I imagine as like a life review. I started to feel every emotion that we could possibly have on earth. And then I really was going into scenes of my own life. Now, after my parents' death, I decided that I would never be a victim ever again, that I would be the perpetrator from then moving forward. Because I didn't know that there was any other option. I thought it was just victimizer and victim, and I didn't know that there was any other way to live. So I started to experience all the pain that I had caused other people as the victimizer, as the perpetrator. And then I went into the feeling of my parents' suicide, not only from the perspective of a grieving daughter, but also from their perspective. And I felt the ocean of anguish that they were drowning in. And this is what I imagine hell to be like, or how people conceptualize hell. I was stuck in a feeling that felt like every cell in my body was wrapped in cement, and there was no way for me to breathe. And then I started hearing these voices, these masculine voices. The first one was my divine masculine energy. And then it kind of transformed into the masculine energies that I knew in my life. So I had a boyfriend that had recently passed away. His voice was there. My father's voice was also there. And I started hearing, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. And so I started to follow that voice. And as I did, I kind of found myself decked on, it felt a lot like a spaceship. It looked a lot like the Gravitron ride from Carnivals. It's like a ride that spins really fast, looks like a UFO, and you could throw yourself up against the wall because there's no gravity inside of it. And I found myself coming out of the side of one of those walls. And I was on this deck, and there was thousands of other souls all around me. And there was this commander in the center. And you can call the commander Christ or Krishna or Buddha or higher consciousness or source. There was some higher entity that was rallying us all up for a mission to Earth. And all these souls were super excited and we're all ready to make the jump down to earth. And everything is happening in my mind's eye simultaneously. So as I'm downloaded with this scene that I'm a divine spiritual soldier sent on a mission to earth, I then find myself in front of a table of beings. And it looked a lot like this long, crappy card table. And I didn't know who the beings were. They didn't tell me who they were, but I didn't even need to ask because they were most certainly people in charge. And so they had this big, huge book and they were thumbing through it. And they said, okay, nice to see you. Prepare for your trip back. You're not meant to stay here. And I was kind of like looking over my shoulders and I was like, you guys aren't talking to me, right? Because I don't know where I am, but it feels groovy here and I am not leaving. It definitely feels way better than where I just was. And they are looking through the book and they're like, no, you still have so much left to do. You're only here for a short time. And I kind of transformed into a small child. And I was like, there is no way that I'm going back. No way, no way. And then they said, well, we'll take you through the details of your pre-birth plan. They showed me that I, as a soul, had actually chosen my life before I got here. And they took me through what looked like a grocery store. And I had this big empty grocery cart. And on the aisles of the grocery store, there were these big cereal boxes. And every cereal box had a life experience on it. And then if it was a life experience that involved another soul, there would be an orb of light behind the cereal box. And we would come into contract with one another, like another soul that wanted to experience something with me. So, I'm grabbing everything off the shelves. I'm like, all right, we're going to Earth. Let's do this thing. And I start grabbing every life experience and I'm really dense ones, sexual trauma, addiction, prostitution, homelessness. I picked my parents. I picked the family line that I would be born into. The one memory that really sticks out for me very vividly is that when I picked the life experience of childhood sexual trauma, and the orb came out as I picked the box. And it was the man, the soul of the man who would abuse me as a small child. And we came like orb to each other and we came into contract that he would play this part in my life. And I saw all the reasons why as well. And one of the main reasons was because in a previous life, I had been his abuser in this capacity. And so we were balancing the energy for each other. And not just for that, but also for the collective. I'm here on this divine mission to uplift the consciousness of the planet. That was the download about the Great Awakening and the transformation of consciousness from 3D to 5D. And so the mission was to transmute energy for the entire collective, not just for my soul or my family line, but for the whole of humanity. There's so many people that deal with these really dense experiences and they might not have access to the healing tools. But this being downloaded with this knowing, seeing this scene in my life, it was like 2 tons of garbage had been released from me. I felt these shackles come off of me. I was no longer a victim to my circumstance. I was actually a divine co-creator of my experience. Things had no longer happened to me, they had happened for me, because on some soul level, I had chosen it for the evolvement of myself. Now, my human cannot understand how childhood sexual trauma can evolve me as a spirit, but today I have unwavering faith that my soul knows what's going on. There's a much bigger picture at play that I do not have access to, and I just trust and believe today. So after I was shown this scene, I was back in front of the table of beings and I was so grateful and I was crying out in gratitude. Thank you so much for this information. This is so helpful. I will still not be returning. And they were like, no, you have to go back. And I said, listen, I'm one of a whole army of spiritual soldiers. You guys have like so many other people carrying this mission out. You guys don't need me. I'm just one. I'm going to grab my PJs and a bowl of popcorn. I'll watch the show from up here. The view is much nicer up here. And they just kept telling me like, no, you have to go back. And I was really dismissive. I said, you guys don't actually tell us what Earth is going to be like. We have no conception of what it's actually like there. And they just kept affirming to me, like, this is not a punishment. You are here because you signed up for something. You know that it's not real. It's just a part that you're playing, like you're home in real reality. So you're just going to go back and finish the game, and then you'll be back home in a blink of an eye. And I was so dismissive. And I said, have you seen the body that I'm in? I cannot go back into her. She is so glitched. She's broken, innately broken. There's no way to fix that. And they said, okay, you don't have to go back into her, but you do have to go back. And so if you choose not to go back into the body you just came from, then we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into. And they showed me this beautiful little baby and everything about her and all of her stats for the video game character. That's how my mind was perceiving it. And that could be because of the generation that I was born in, or it could be because we're living in a simulation, whatever, either way. So, they showed me everything about her, and she was going to have to finish my life experience cart. So she was going to have to start over, have almost all of the same experiences as me. And then she had some of her own experiences thrown in the cart as well because of the family line that she was going to be born into. And I thought, wow, if these are really my only options, starting from zero or going back into the body I just came from, then I guess I'll just go back into her. And then I found myself sifting back into my awareness, and I remember them saying, trust us. The second part of your life will not be nearly as challenging as the first. You'll be living in awareness. You'll have kindred spirits, soulmates, teachers, mentors. You'll have spiritual help along the way now. Just trust us. And I was like, I do not trust you guys. And then I found myself back in my awareness. And I just wrote the whole thing off as drug-induced psychosis because I had this experience as a result of an overdose. So I just thought, like, damn, I'm so high that I think I'm talking to God. This is crazy. And because I was so rooted in atheism, this was not part of the picture. I didn't even know what spiritual awakening was. I had never even heard those words together. And I definitely had never heard of any of the things that I was downloaded with. I had this download of this scene of the Great Awakening, and I had never heard of that before. And then later, as I integrated my experience, I found information on the internet that confirmed all of the things that I was shown inside of my spiritual experience. And that's how I developed faith. I developed a foundation in faith by the tangible evidence that Source provided me with when it came to being able to recognize that I was not in control. So some of those divine signs and synchronicities that helped me develop faith was, after my experience, all of my drug dealers simultaneously decided to change their lives and stop selling drugs. Like, I'm talking about men that did not know each other. I'd call up one guy, he'd be like, hey, listen, I found Jesus. I want to be a good dad. I'm out of the game. And I'm like, okay, bye, weird. And then I'd call up the next guy and he'd say the same story, but these men did not know each other. And so, then I had no way to get what I needed. And some of them more, and then I also experienced a spontaneous healing. I was on day 3 of withdrawal from opiates, which is the absolute worst. It's like you're sick all over yourself, like you have diarrhea. Did you not think I was not going to use the word diarrhea today? I absolutely was. Like you're sick, just like so sick. It feels like your bones are made of fire and like your skin is made of broken glass, and it's so insanely painful. And there's actually nothing physically wrong with you. That's the craziest part, is you are in the most immense pain of your life. It feels like someone's taking a hatchet to every inch of you, and there's nothing physically happening. It's all inside your mind. It's all, these neural pathways are all messed up. And I remember saying, like, I know how my parents felt. I understand why they did what they did. They could not take this pain anymore. And then I heard this voice and it told me that I could request what I wanted fixed. And so I was like, in the throes of desperation, I was like, okay, silly voice, I'll bite. I want to no longer be physically dependent on this substance. I didn't say that I wanted to be rid of my drug addiction, because I still definitely wanted to use other drugs. I just didn't want to have a physical dependency to this one substance. And so I saw these 2 little men appear in my mind's eye, and they were wearing these white lab coats, and they had these bulbous noses and these little lawnmowers. And then I watched them walk through every crevice of my mind. And as they mowed through, I felt these intense hot tingles. And then my whole head was lit up like it was on fire. And then there was this bright white flash, and I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of heroin withdrawal. I mean, like moments before, I was sick all over myself, welcoming death, and then I was completely fine. And these little men inside my mind, they were plowing out my neural pathways. They were resetting my pain receptors. Because again, there's nothing physically wrong with me, but I feel like there is. And then all of a sudden, everything was reset and I was completely healed. So, I mean, that will give you a little bit of faith in the divine, just a little bit. And after that experience, I thought I was the second coming of Christ. Okay. I was like out on the New York City subway system, laying hands on homeless drug addicts. I was like, I can heal you. Let me heal you. It was so chaotic. It was so crazy. And then while I was on one of those trains preaching and proselytizing to the masses about how fast food is poison and drugs are bad, mind you, I was like a homeless crackhead at the time. So like no one's going to listen to me. I was on a train. There was nobody in the train car, which is very odd in New York City. And this man appeared across from me and he was wearing a 12-step fellowship necklace. And I heard a voice and it said, that's your path. Follow him to a 12-step meeting. And that's when I decided that, I really had to get onto a different path. This is when my foundation and faith really became super firm, because the universe was presenting me with the people that were going to guide me where I needed to go. And I went to another meeting the next day, and I did not look the way that I look now when this happened to me. I was super skinny, sunken in, my skin was gray, my eyes were dead. I had most of my teeth were missing. Thank you, recovery, for letting me buy some teeth. And I looked destroyed. And I went to this meeting and this woman grabbed me as I walked in and she hugged me, because that's what we do in meetings. We hug each other and we give each other that unconditional love. And she whispered in my ear and she said, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. And it's the same message that I heard my dad and my boyfriend telling me in my spiritual experience. And I just melted into that woman and I laid my head on her big boobies for as long as she would let me. And I cried and I cried and I merged with her, and I knew that this was my path. And so there's so many other divine signs and synchronicities that gave me that foundation and faith. And, I tell people all the time, if you haven't experienced a miracle yet, you can borrow one of mine until you experience your own, because yours are waiting for you. It's just about how aware are you to look at them. I mean, anything can be a miracle. I see a pigeon feather on the sidewalk. I'm like, oh my God, angels. My boyfriend's like, that's a dirty pigeon feather. Because I can decide what's a miracle in my life today. I can choose the lens of perception that I see things through. And miracles are available to all of us. It is our birthright, because I know that if grace and unconditional love is available to me, it's literally available to everyone. I mean, there are no words for me to explain to you what kind of depraved animal I was before this experience. But the fact that I have been bestowed with my awakening, with awareness, with healing, with hope, with a home, with community, all of these things became available to me, and I was not a good person. I was a very harmful being. And so I know that if transformation is possible for me, it's literally possible for everybody. So I have to keep that in mind as well when I'm hanging on to those resentments, and I can see the person in my mind's eye right now, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I see you there. I'll give you a little bit of grace. I know that the universe does as well.
That was fantastic. That was really a great storytelling too. I love your humor. It almost you ever see Drunk History? Like there was like moments of, I love that. That was great.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, I love it. I'm not going back. And it strikes me that you bring out two really beautiful spiritual teachings. I think one is when I'm healed, I'm not healed alone. And the other is, what is forgiveness when you realize that the perpetrator was on your side? So I'd love for you to just talk more about how did that unlock your resentment towards all of those figures who had done so much harm for you when you made that shift in perception?
Oh my goodness, it has been so transformative. It was much easier for me to let go of certain resentments because I recognize that I came into these contracts. There's some pieces of my ego that won't let go of the idea of things. Like if there are some relationships in my life that don't look the way that I want them to look, that my human thinks that they should look, then those are the things that I kind of hang on to resentment and anger around. And every day it's a practice of letting go and surrendering.
I'm curious, the ones that you actually witnessed yourself making that soul contract with, are those ones easier to forgive than the ones where you didn't see that?
Yes, absolutely. But I still have the knowing that all of the relationships have been that way, and being able to witness the fact that we all chose each other, that we would all play these characters for each other, that that's exactly what it is. It's just not happening in my timeline, in my human timeline. I'm sure it's all working out in divine right timing, but my human is so attached to things happening when I want them to, the way that I want them to. And I have to get out of the way and let source step in and lead the way. But there's some things that I refuse to let go of.
The ones that you refuse to let go of at the moment, are those ones that where you saw the agreement being made, or was those sort of not in the near-death experience that you had?
So kind of. So, like one of the things is that I caused a lot of harm to my sister in my life. And she doesn't care if I have 4.5 years in recovery, if I had some profound spiritual experience. She has wounds and so do I. And so like we mirror those wounds back and forth to each other. So, that's one of the ones that's really hard for me to let go of. This is my most epic, special relationship in my life. And I want it to already be fast forwarded, and I want it to be healed already. But that's just not the way that it's going to work right now, because it's not just me making decisions. It's also the other person's soul in contract as well. Maybe she has to learn other things by having a separation between the two of us. Yeah, it's my process, and I'm here for it, I guess.
When I was a kid, there was this movie Flatliners, and it was about a bunch of med school students who got together and stopped each other's hearts,
yeah,
and then defibrillated each other like a minute later so they could spend a minute in the afterlife to find out what was on the other side. Something about that like really stirred me. And I think there's something in so many of us that really longs for that afterlife experience, that transcendent experience, that higher place, that place that seems to transform your life.
Yeah.
Until recently, there's been very few ways to get there. And recently, there's been a discovery that certain people, through the power of sound, can be triggered into having that experience. And the way they're triggered is if they're high in openness and high in empathy and tend to get goosebumps from great music.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
There is a pathway from their ears to the emotional centers of their brain and to their pineal gland, which releases DMT. And so the right sound frequencies, the right sound coming in to your ears could actually trigger you to release DMT, which is the most psychedelic substance known to man. It is what's released when you dream and when you have a near-death experience. And there's something that can happen sonically to help you have that experience. And that's what those goosebumps are the beginnings of. And so people who have tried this app, people who've had near-death experiences, who've tried this app, and the app's called Most High, by the way, people who have tried it say it's the closest thing they've ever experienced to the afterlife that they experienced during their near-death experience. The other interesting thing is people who've done it say that they feel the presence of lost loved ones who are in the afterlife. So there's another amazing gem waiting for people who try this.
That's so beautiful.
And I think due to courageous people like you sharing their story and innovations like this app, more and more people are going to be able to access that out-of-body experience, that higher place, that transcendent realm, that transformative grace, that ecstatic high, that overwhelming love. In my dream, I
distant light, the great unknown, an ancient voice calls my name, a need so deep I can't explain.
If you'd like to see the full uncut version of this near-death experience, it's in our app and the link is in our description. And if you'd like to know what to watch next on YouTube, well, maybe the Heavenly Angels have something in mind and this video right here might be it. Give it a click.